What's going on, everybody? What's up? Nobody's here yet. You'll get here. Everybody will get here. I just sent out the text message. It'll take a second for that to reach the far ends of the earth. While I'm doing that, remember, this is a call-in show. This is a pre-show. We're just about to get started. Don't go anywhere. Here, don't worry. You can look at me. Here I am. I'm right here. I'm going to go ahead. You know what I haven't been doing is popping in the call-in link on X. So I'm going to try doing that just in case. Let's see here. Call-in link. Colon. It's always a question. Do we use the colon? Do we use a hyphen? Maybe we should do some A/B testing. Just did the colon on my X account. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna do the hyphen. Gonna do the hyphen on the Canary Cry X account. I don't think we have a whole ton of X people that tune in anyways, but you know, it's not gonna hurt. Not gonna hurt. Oh, look at this. I'm gonna turn on the chat on the screen so y'all can see your own chat in a tiny, tiny, tiny format. There it is. Okay. Oh, you know what? Feeding the ducks is gonna loop unless I catch it. There we go. This camera is a little bit wonky. Let's try that. Perfect. Perfect. Everything is coming together. Yes, okay, let me post one more call-in link. As if this is like the most important possible thing to do, but I'm going to do it anyways. Here we go. Look at that. We already got retweets. We already got likes. Uh-oh. I'm getting some glitchiness on the back end here, which is to be expected. Call-in link hyphen. Let's see. We'll do a little test. What is more alluring to people to call in? Is it the hyphen? Is it the colon? Okay. Well, we're going to get the show started here in just a second. It looks like the text message has arrived in people's messages. This is funny. You see me looking around all crazy like this. Sometimes, you know, you assume that I'm looking at something inside the VR. Sometimes I'm looking down through the nose of the VR headset because I need to see something in the real world. Look at that. That's why I was interested in Apple Vision. Apple Vision Pro, their VR thing is hardly even VR. It's augmented reality, where I can be both in the metaverse and see the real world. But at that point, if you're seeing the real world through a projection on the inside of some glasses you're wearing, is that even real? Is that even technically the real world? Or are you even more so in a hologram, an illusory, a counterfeit version of the real world, if you're seeing it through like a digital camera, something like that? Just some stuff to think about while I scramble to plug this controller in so I don't lose connectivity. All right. Isaiah 40. Oh, I get it. Isaiah 42:14 says dual citizenship in the real and digital world. That's a spooky thought, isn't it? Okie dokie. Let's just get down to business. I'm going to refresh a page back here. It might send a little something into glitchy mode. It looks like we're okay. Remember, this is a call-in show. We will be premiering Guns is Beyond the Verse. That's all I have to say about that. It's going to be great. We're going to discuss it. Not going to lie, folks, here in the pre-show. Pre-live show, you get a little insight. I am not totally sure what to do with this show. Okay? Not totally sure. I barely ever have. I'm never totally sure. I'll tell you that. But sometimes, you know, at least I got something to fall back on. I don't know if I have anything to fall back on today. So we're gonna find out. We're gonna see what happens. But it means it's good to remember that we may just need to rely even more on people calling in, saying hi, having look, you don't have to have something to talk about. Don't think that you got to call in with some presentation. You don't got to send me a slideshow. You don't got to walk us through, some sort of cosmology or eschatology or whatever, biology. We're just hanging out. Maybe I need to remember that myself. I think I'm saying that to myself more than anything else. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I got distracted with the chat. The chat's great. This week there's been some issues a little bit with the text message alert system. A lot of people saying that they're not receiving the texts, and and it's not like I get a warning. I don't get an error when you don't receive a text and you're signed up for the text message alert system. So I don't know this. I only know this when people send me a message. The other way that I can get a clue if something is amiss is the amount of text messages I get back. Now, of course, it's not required. People send a message back. But, I generally will get, a couple dozen people texting back when I send out the text message alert system. But when I send it out and there's like 3, that makes me wonder. Makes me wonder if the text didn't get delivered. So if you're in the chat and you're on the text message list, let me know if you didn't get the text message. Because I have a support ticket in, and they're asking how many people are not receiving messages, which is a cruel question to ask because I don't know if you're not getting them unless you know you're not getting them and you tell me that. It's a trap, is what I'm saying. It's a trap. And if you're not on the text message alert system, you should get on it. Don't feel, don't be, what's the word? Don't be dissuaded from joining the text message alert system by texting the word canary to 877-740-3226. Again, just the word canary to 877-740-3226. You'll hopefully get a text message before every show so you never miss one, but you can text that number back. That's right. Open line of communication. And I read them all. Sometimes I read them on the show. 940 says my last text. Oh, this is another thing to remember if you're texting me. I don't know why the system is this way, but it just is. I can only work with the tools that I have. I can't see our whole thread of the entire conversation. I can only really see the responses that you make to that day's text at a time. So if you're referring to something you've texted in the past or on a different day, I can't see that. I mean, I could dig around and stuff, but I can't do that live. It's a little bit laborious. So just a heads up, just a little tip there for everybody. If you're going to refer back to something, you got to remind me what that is. All right, we're going to get the show started. We're just going to do it. Here we go. Let's do it. This is enough yapping, enough uninspired yapping. So this is how this is going to work. I'm going to put this on the screen. Look at that. Woo, beautiful. Then I'm going to hit this jingle. Then we're going to get the party started. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Where's the jingle? Oh, come on. Ah, there it is. Okay, here we go. Woo!
Called it. We got a caller. We got a caller on the line here.
What's going on, everybody? You're here. You're listening to Canary Cry Clubhouse, our end of the week fellowship session. However, it is also a very serious and deep exploration into whatever Gonza's, that's Face Like the Sun. Face Like the Sun's mini documentaries. They're called Beyond the Verse, and they are quite popular. And he's really digging in, folks. You may have heard recently on Canary Cry News Talk that Gonz is taking classes now for his mini MDiv. I don't really know what a mini MDiv is, but MDiv is a Masters of Divinity. that is official theological training, which is great. It's good news. It's good for Gons. It's good for the brand. It's good for his work. And it's probably good for him. You know, he needs something for himself. That's we all need a little something for ourselves. But I have a feeling that as he continues to take this MDiv course, the Beyond the Verses are going to get more and more, what's the word? Scholastic, academic, obscure. That's my insight, my inclination, my expectation. We'll see. We will see if that happens. I'm kind of expecting that is the case, because simply by the name, the title of this week's Beyond the Verse, which is, where did it go? Let me see it. The Four Cherubim and their Counterfeit Beasts. Unlock the mystery. You know, it's an interesting topic. Well, of course it's an interesting topic, but it's one of the crazier, it's like the last brick in the wall of the last 5 years of shifting media, mass media, alt media, and just people's general interest in stuff. Because of course, AI, you know, whatever, the pandemic came out and suddenly everybody was talking about, you know, the things wrapped up in that. Then what was next? AI came out. And suddenly everybody was talking about AI and diving into the implications. And we're sitting here like chopped liver. I was watching, I saw a video that went by on the timeline yesterday. And it was this young gal. She must have been like 20. And she was like, hey guys, I'm here. I've been studying the AI issue. And you know me. You know, I'm always keeping an eye out. I'm always diving deep into the AI and what this means and how we should think about it and what it means for society. Okay, I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this since 2022. I'm like, good. Okay, that's good. I mean, for people who needed to wait for AI to come out to start looking into it and thinking about it, that's about as good as you can get, I suppose. No, nothing wrong with that. She was too young. To be honest, she's not old enough to have even been talking about AI as long as Canarians have. She's 13. Let's see here. Yeah, she was 7 years old when when we were first talking about AI in society. So, anywho, I'm glad to see. In the end, we're very glad to see that society is catching up. And one of the last ones, and it feels like it is triggered mostly by the Israel-Iran conflict, because suddenly, and we covered this last episode on Wednesday on Canary Cry News Talk, we have Tucker and Ted Cruz talking about eschatology and, you know, this idea that both the Jews and the Christians, you know, consider that the end of days will happen in, around, or because of Israel or whatever. And everybody's talking. The Daily Mail wrote an article about it. We covered that on Wednesday. If you didn't hear it, go back and listen to it. The Daily Mail, this full-on biblical prophecy, Book of Revelation, eschatology, end of the world from the Judeo-Christian perspective. We've got people who have never even cracked the Bible coming on and talking about like the Scofield Bible and what that means for dispensationalism and why this is such an important thing for the Israel-Iran conflict. It's like, okay, there we go. That was the last thing. That was the last thing on the list for mainstream, alternative mainstream, to catch up to the weirdos on the internet. I don't know what's going to happen, folks. Not just with the world, but just with, you know, my life, also the world. But as always, the only thing I can do, we can do, is just take the next right step. The Lord only illuminates, or often only illuminates, the next stepping stone in the path that he is taking you down. Because if he flipped on the lights and you could see the whole journey from beginning to end, you would turn around. It would be too scary. The obstacles would seem too big. Your options would seem too wide open. And there is some creator of the universe level wisdom to giving us humans, putting us in a situation, creating us in such a way, at least for now, that we are bound to the now of time. We are not omnipotent or omnichronical. We are inside of time. He is outside of time. And there's no real reason. There's no logical reason why we even had to be inside of time. This was just a choice, a creative choice that the creator of the universe made. Was I'm going to make these little guys. I'm going to base them off of me. I'm going to make them in my image, or our image, if you want to get real deep into it. I'm going to make them in our image, and but I'm going to change a few things. One of the biggest things I'm going to change about these little humans is that they actually experience time chronologically. They're only going to get to live it one moment at a time, which I know it's a crazy idea. I don't know. I don't even know how that would work. We've never seen it before. I've never made a little guy with a brain and a soul in my image that's had to ever live chronologically in time. It's going to be a good experiment. I think it might be like the number one diversion. I'm not saying it's the only diversion. I think maybe, at least by our own standards, God creating human beings. Oh gosh, sorry, I dropped my keyboard. God creating human beings to live inside of time instead of outside of time, like him, is maybe the main defining difference. I'm not saying it's the only difference, but I'm saying from our perspective, maybe one of the biggest differences. Because we have the creativity. We take creativity for granted, but human beings and God, sort of the only two creative beings in the universe. We know this. Not even the angels, not even that rebellious angel. They're not creative. They're counterfeiters. The best any other being can do, living being that we know of, the best they can do is copy, is counterfeit. Even animals. You say, well, I saw an elephant that could paint pictures. Yeah, how did that elephant learn to paint pictures? He was taught to paint pictures. Well, he painted a house. Yeah, because an elephant painting trainer, an elephant painting coach, taught them how to do that. They don't know it's a house. They're not imagining a house in their head and creating its form on canvas out of nothing. They were taught step by step to paint the house. And how were they taught? Treats. They were given treats. That is how you teach. Okay, so you get it. Human beings, creativity, to be able to make something out of nothing, to design something that's never existed before, to bring it into being, whether it's a painting or whether it's a cell phone or a story or something like that. I mean, don't you get me started on stories. Animals don't tell stories. They don't observe the world in stories. We exclusively observe the world in stories. These are the things we don't have in common with other created beings, which means they must be what we have in common with God. With the exception of the time thing. He said, I'm going to breathe my spirit into man. I'm going to give him my creativity. I'm going to give him all sorts of things. But I'm going to trap him in time like an animal. And it will be his biggest obstacle. His number one most avoidable fault these little guys I made, humanity, is that they will experience time chronologically like a dog. Why did I get into this? Oh, yeah. So we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what comes next. We can only see what's right in front of us. It'd be too much for God to flip the lights on and suddenly we can see the journey from beginning to end. It would be too hard. We'd be scared away. We wouldn't even take the next step. So he's only shining that lamp right on the next step, and that's all we can do. So there's a little encouragement for anybody else out there who doesn't know what to do. But remember, we are going to be premiering here in a moment. We are going to be premiering Beyond the Verse this week. The Four Cherubim and their Counterfeit Beasts. This one's pushing the limits on time. This one's over 9 minutes. Ooh, over 9 minutes. Now remember, you're seeing this here for the first time. It's not posted anywhere else. That's a good reason to tune in here on Thursdays. It'll get posted on the Face Like the Sun channel on Saturday. So you can run around and brag that you saw it, not only saw it, but discussed it before anybody else. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. I see we have somebody in the back room, in the waiting room, which is a good reason for me to remind you. This is a call-in show. In the description of this video, wherever you're watching it, you'll see a call-in link. You click on that, you click a couple buttons that ask you a question, and then you'll get put into the back room, the backstage, where you can watch the show, listen to the show. You can also chat with other people in the back room there. And when the time comes, I will bring you on stage and we can chat. I am going to ask a question of our dear caller who is in the waiting room now, if they have a preference whether they come on the show before or after Beyond the Verse. Because I would love to just bring them on now. I love getting pre-Beyond the Verse callers. But sometimes people call in early because they want to be the first to discuss Beyond the Verse. And so coming on beforehand is not what they want. So caller in the back room, you see the private chat there? Let me know in the next few seconds. Otherwise, we'll jump in. Okay. He says he's okay either way. All right, let's do this. This will be fun. Yeah, because here's the problem. I'm going to do it. We're going to bring you on, Esteban, because after Beyond the Verse, I tend to yap for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I don't want to make you wait too long. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring on the first caller. Remember, it could be you, folks. Just click that link down in the description. And here we go. We're going to bring on Esteban. Esteban, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
How you doing, Brother Basil? I'm okay either way. I thought you were actually live now, so
We are. We're live right now. You are
well, I
live
mean,
on the
Beyond the
show.
Verse. Beyond the Verse, I mean, I thought it was already, because that show starts at 4, correct?
No, well, I don't know. It depends where you are in the world. So this show goes live.
Eastern Standard Time.
Today we went live at 1, which, would have been 4. And we start with this, and then we'll play Beyond the Verse basically right after your call. But if you want to stick around in the waiting room and watch that, listen to that, and come in and chat about it afterwards, that's totally fine too.
Whatever works best for you, brother. I just thought, we had such a great discussion last week, and I want
you were the
to.
fella. I see. You were the fella from last week. Okay, great, wonderful.
Sir.
Well, why don't we do this? If you don't mind, why don't we watch Beyond the Verse, and that'll get things rolling, and then we'll have something to chat about afterwards.
Okay. If I drop, can you bring me back in, please?
Yeah. You just hang out in the back room. If you disappear from the back room, you just pop back in. I'll make sure you're first in line either way.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you after the show.
Okay.
Here's also a good reminder, folks. Thanks, Esteban. We're going to get you back in. Very interesting fella. Had a great conversation last week. We are going to, as usual, remember, we are going to have a timer on the call-ins. And don't worry, the call-in, the timer is not a dead drop, deadline, call cuts off, and you're thrown in jail type of timer. It's just a way for us to shoot for. We're just shooting for 10 minutes per caller. And then, so we can actually fit some callers in. All right, well, let's do this. We're going to jump in to Beyond the Verse, the Four Cherubim and their Counterfeit Beasts. We'll all be experiencing this together for the first time. Let's go.
What do the four beasts that surround the throne of God have to do with the Tetraevangelion, or the four Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Welcome to Beyond the Verse, where we will briefly explore these strange beings that live in the presence of the Lord, and their likely counterfeits on earth. In Revelation 4, verses 6 through 8, it says, "And before the throne was something like a sea of glass, as clear as crystal. In the center around the throne were four living creatures covered with eyes in front and back. The first living creatures was like a lion, the second like a calf, the third had a face like a man, and the fourth was like an eagle in flight. And each of the four living creatures had 6 wings that was covered with eyes all around and within. Day and night they never stop saying, 'Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come.'" These living beings are eternal worshipers located at the epicenter of God's presence. Being covered in eyes is symbolic of divine perception and cosmic awareness, and likely reflects the omnipotence and omnipresence of God. The faces of these creatures represent the full spectrum of creation: the wild animal with the lion, the domesticated animal with the ox, humanity, which is man, and the heavens, represented by the eagle. What John documented here on the island of Patmos in the 1st century was likely what originated in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 1, where they are described as awe-inspiring beings unlike anything earthly. Verse 5 mentions their human-like appearance. Verse 6 says that they each had 4 faces and 4 wings. Verse 7 talks about how the legs were straight and the feet were like calves' hooves, gleaming like polished bronze. Verse 8 says that they had human hands under their wings, on all 4 sides. In verse 10 it says, "The form of their faces was that of a man, and each of the 4 had the face of a lion on the right side, the face of an ox on the left side, and also the face of an eagle. Each creature had 4 faces, one on each side of the head: the human face in front, the lion face to the right, the ox face on the left, and the eagle face on the back." Verses 11 through 14 describe more about the details about its 4 wings, where they were placed, and how they covered their bodies. Their movement is also peculiar, as it says they moved in perfect unison, straight forward without turning in verse 12, where it also says that it was the Spirit which led this entire creature. It describes their movement as being like flashes of lightning, a critical touchstone between the seen and unseen realms. Verses 15 through 21 outlines the popular wheel within a wheel, where it was once again full of eyes and had multi-directional movement. The chapter also describes their sounds and their wings, which were like rushing waters. These creatures appear again in Ezekiel 10, where they are explicitly called cherubim. And finally in Revelation 4, where we first started, where these 4 creatures are clearly described, sitting around the throne, worshiping the Lord. Early church fathers like Irenaeus and Jerome believed these 4 creatures represented the 4 Gospels. The lion represented Matthew, Jesus as king. The ox represented Mark, Jesus as servant. Man was represented by Luke, Jesus as Son of Man, and the eagle was represented in John, Jesus as Son of God. These four living creatures became the embodied proclamation of the gospel from heaven's throne. The early church fathers believed that these aspects were the pinnacle attributes of creation, with the lion being authority and courage, the ox being strength and service, man being intelligence and wisdom, and the eagle being swiftness and spiritual heights. And of course, one of the more fascinating parts about the four creatures that surround the throne of God and have peculiar sights and sounds, according to Ezekiel 1, is found in what might be the counterfeit of such creatures. We read in Daniel 7, where Daniel declared, "In my vision in the night I looked, and suddenly the four winds of heaven were churning up the great sea, and four great beasts came up out of the sea, each one different from the others." Of course, the great sea represented the realm of chaos and rebellion. And in verse 4, it says, "The first beast was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted up from the ground, and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and given the mind of a man." Considering the fact that the 4 cherubim who surround the throne of God are represented as a man, a lion, and an eagle, suggests that whatever is going on here with what Daniel saw, which appears again in Revelation 13, is some kind of abominable science experiment gone wrong in order to try to create a divine cherubim. Verse 5, it says, "Suddenly another beast appeared, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, so it was told, 'Get up and gorge yourself on flesh.'" Bear having 3 ribs in his mouth and between its teeth suggests something akin to God removing a rib from Adam to make Eve. The fact that this bear creature is gorging on flesh leaves little wiggle room for what it might mean, at least in the context of a counterfeit to the cherubim who surround God's throne. Then in verse 6, it tells of a leopard who had on its back 4 wings like those of a bird, with 4 heads, and given authority to rule. Here we have the leopard synonymous with the conglomerate beast that has properly the 4 wings and the 4 heads, much like one of God's cherubim. This beast destroys much. And a deeper dive into verse 7 and verse 8 reveals how the little horn that arises and takes hold of this beast is the man of sin. The parallel passage to this description in Daniel 7 is found in Revelation 13, where John outlines the same beast with the lion, leopard, and bear, each having its own characteristics, and the dragon giving the power and throne and great authority over to this beast. And there is one more potential connection to the 4 beasts which are found in the 4 horsemen of Revelation 6. Each horseman has its own flavor of chaos, with the first being conquest, then war, then famine, then death. Could these be the potential consequences of the false beast, much like the consequences of the 4 beasts around God's throne are simply in eternal state of worship? And so through this brief survey of the 4 beasts, we can clearly start to see patterns where God's throne establishes a particular order, and man, with the help of God's adversaries, creating an abominable copy or clone, attempting to display authority and power. It all points back to the Lamb. In Revelation 5:6, it says, "Then I saw a lamb who appeared to have been slain, standing in the center of the throne, encircled by the 4 living creatures." Despite how powerful these 4 cherubim appear to be, they bow before him, casting their crowns and worshiping the one worthy to open the scroll. If you find this research helpful and
We know that part, Gons. Thank you very much. We're here. Goodness gracious. That was very interesting. I had not thought of that before. Now, in case anyone needed, I mean, that is some pretty deep eschatological examination there, spanning throughout the Old Testament to the New Testament, straight through the book of Revelation there. And it is one of the interesting things about specifically end times prophecy is this repeated appearance of sort of crazy chimeric beasts. Now, earlier in the description was the description of cherubim. And this is interesting because just to put another thing on the list of things that have sort of somehow gone mainstream, wheels within wheels, biblically accurate angels, has been a pretty broadly used meme recently. It seems like everybody, even, people outside of official church circles, or, I mean, heck, maybe not even believers or something like that. This meme, meaning, this piece of sort of cultural genetic material, has really caught a lot of speed the past couple years. The wheels within wheels, the biblical accurate angels with wings coming out everywhere, and the eyeballs. Let me just pull this up. This could be fun. I'm just going to go ahead, just do a Google search for biblical. I probably actually shouldn't do Google, because that doesn't tell you anything. That just tells you what exists on the internet. I'm going to do it on X here. Biblically accurate angels. Oh, good. Oh, good. I'm so glad you guys can't see what I can see, because trying to type on a keyboard in a VR headset, looking just down the nose. Oh, but this is good. Okay, let's go like this. Look at that. Search does, the robots are so good. They don't even need me to spell a single word in that search correctly. I just think of what could have happened if I did spell this search correctly. I'm going to bring this up on screen here, just so we can get an idea of what we're working with. Ooh, a GIF. Oh, we've got a biblically accurate angel GIF. Here it is. Look at that. Look at that spooky guy. This is from A Slice of History, which, that's some pretty decent history there. Here's another guy, bunch of wings, eyeballs all over the place. Ooh, somebody was even posting about, yes, the cherubim description here, which is different. It's not the wheels within wheels. It's not the wings and the eyeballs. This is a terrifying display of the cherubim, where it's the form of a man. Don't block cookies, or do block cookies. Block all the cookies. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, cookies. Please block the cookies. It's not going away. You've got the form of a man. He's got the eagle wings. He's got a scary sort of bald, I don't know, Russian man's face coming out the front. And then you've got the ox coming out of our right side, the lion coming out of the left side. Then I believe that means the eagle's face would be coming out of the back, which is not pictured, probably because it's too terrifying. And it's an interesting juxtaposition at the end, because you have descriptions of these really monstrous, horrible things. I mean, this is like pure horror movie stuff here. And it aligns with what the experience of being encountering an angel is described like in the Bible. Every time a human being has a contact with an angel, it's not like Sunday school felt boards where it's like a beautiful, Norwegian man with long hair and wings and a white robe. If this is the description of angels, these sort of ghastly monster looking things, which, Look, this is, again, we could go all the way back to the flatland problem. For those who don't know, this is a way, I think maybe the first person to tell me about flatland was Josh Peck many years ago. You can check out the Canary Cry radio episodes with Josh Peck. They're a real hoot. But flatland is a way to ideate, to think about, to cognate, if you will, use another complicated word, to imagine what it's like for beings who have access to more than 3 dimensions. How, when, and why would they show up in this dimension at all? Because, of course, very long-standing theology is that there are angels and hosts and beings all around. They are, actually, this fits quite well in with last week's conversation with Esteban as well. We're talking about, what exactly is the difference between material and spiritual. Like we think of being a spirit as sort of being a ghost and flying around and going through walls, and physical, is a little bit more about being in contact with, being held to what we know as the laws of physics, gravity, your atoms sticking together. And, my exploration, my wondering, and the things that have led up to this conversation in the past few weeks have led to me questioning, we really only have this idea that physical and spiritual are separate entities. They are 2 separate places, 2 separate dimensions, and your spirit man and your physical man, one inhabits the other, but they are not necessarily connected. They are not bound. They are not whatever. And somebody texted this, so I don't mean to get too deep into the back end of it, but it just seems this is what happens when I start a show and I don't have really a plan for it. And then the Lord steps in, Holy Spirit says, okay, well, let me just start piecing everything perfectly together to whatever, communicate what I want to communicate. Because I got a text message. Who is this from? I'm not sure who this is from. But they say, Basil, I encourage you to flesh out your ideas on the body and the Gnostic teaching that has influenced evangelical Christians. Your conversation on that was really eye-opening for me, who has a similar church background as you. You had some great points, as well as the Canaries who called in. Yes, lots of great points. And just to be clear, I am not presenting an apologetic for any for any hard theology that really would change anything important. Especially for salvation, but really, this is not a life and death situation. But the idea that our spirit, that things that are spirit and things that are material are separate entities that live in different places. Okay. And however, we see these moments where, for instance, Enoch or Elisha get brought up in a whirlwind. Their body gets brought up into a whirlwind, and then they are inhabiting heaven and are living with God. So, the discussion asked last time, actually, was with Esteban. I should probably bring Esteban here on in a second, but let me lay this out just because it'll help me formulate my ideas and maybe bring some understanding. And this texter wanted me to talk about it. So, the question is, for instance, when Elisha got brought up in the whirlwind and, lived with God, his body went with him. His body, he didn't die. His whole body went up in the whirlwind with him. And then the question is, well, okay, what happens to his body? As his physical body, did it get transformed? Did it dissolve? And then what was left was a spirit man, and this type of thing. It's just an interesting question. And Esteban had mentioned, well, he believes that when his physical body got brought up, then either there's a transformation of his physical body or something. I don't mean to be flippant about it, or it was either transformed, or his spirit man was separated from his body and his body discarded or something, and is living as a spirit man with God. And you go back to the roots of this idea, and it's obviously an idea that people have a very difficult time separating from, and it's also a very difficult idea to imagine any other way. And that is, as I'll refer to it, as the Gnostic heresy. One of the Gnostic heresies, there were many Gnostic heresies, and you may have heard the word Gnostics. They were early Christians who had some crazy ideas and were kicked out of the group of, let's call them, I don't know, mainstream Christians or regular Christians at the time. And one of these heresies was that everything material was made of the very substance that it is made of is evil. And everything that is in the spirit is good. And not just that material was all bad and spirit was all good, but that they were separate from each other in such a distinct way at all was a very new idea. Because before that, it seems, from what we can read, that while the spirit and the body could be described distinct from one another, that they weren't necessarily two separate entities. And as an experiment, we can think about, okay, well, a good example of this is angels. And angels, spirit beings. They're all, by the Gnostic heresy, they're pure good, pure spirit, spiritual beings. But they do show up physically. And we can talk about holograms, or what does it mean for a physical eyeball to see a spiritual being? These are all the big questions. And what I found during thinking and studying and researching as much of the information that is possible about this is that we make these assumptions. These are assumptions that have, stemmed from the Gnostic heresy and been so ingrained into American Christianity that it's hard for us to even imagine a reality that doesn't have material and spirit separate from one another. And so part of what I'm trying to do, and often failing in these conversations, is to try to find the language to describe material and spirit while being different dimensions of a person, them being less of two separate objects, spirit and body. Because you talk about dimensions. What are dimensions? Width, length, height. That's 3 dimensions, okay? And if we put this in the conversation of dimension, you wouldn't say the width of something is a separate entity from the height of something. They're just different dimensions of the same object, different characteristics of the same object. In the same way, what if we thought of spirit and material as 2 different dimensions of the same object, of the same person? And you think about how this is displayed in the Bible. One of them, Elisha getting caught up in a whirlwind and living in heaven. It's kind of weird. There's no evidence. Look, we can theorize all we want, but the theory that he transformed into spirit, or that his body was discarded or something, this is conjecture, and it's been very popular mainstream conjecture forever, for a very long time. This is sort of, like I said, growing up in church, never not been a church guy. This is so ingrained and so established in modern American Christianity that it's even hard to think, like we don't even have the language. And as I've said many times before, if you don't have language for something, you have a very hard time even thinking about it. The example being when again, it might be apocryphal, but when the conquistadors came over to South America, when the natives looked out on the ocean and they saw the big ships, they didn't have any language for what they were seeing. The only language, the closest language that they had was clouds. And so they did not know that there was a ship. They never seen a ship. They didn't have word for a ship. And the only word one could describe it was clouds. And so they just thought it was, saw the big sails on the horizon and just thought they were clouds. In the same way, it's really hard to think of language or to use language in a way to look at this idea in a different way. So, but I think this dimensional thing might have helped me. So if we think of material body and spiritual body more as a width and a height or a length of the same object, that might get us through a little bit of the conversation today. And then you go back to some of the biblical references, angels appearing materially, disappearing. You've got the body of Christ, his actual body disappearing, reappearing. You've got many of these times when there seems to be a movement between what we'd call the spiritual realm and the material realm. Someone passing back and forth, appearing in one, disappearing in the other, appearing in another, back and forth. Jesus, Elisha, Enoch's another good example, and angels. Now back to Flatland. If we're thinking about this in dimensional terms here, many of you already know Flatland, so this is just a review. But for those who don't know, this is a thought experiment to help understand what it might be like to observe or effectuate other dimensions as a being. You think of a piece of paper, a flat piece of paper, and you draw a stick figure on it. That stick figure lives in two dimensions, height and width, right? He's not three-dimensional, he's two-dimensional. And then the guy who just drew, the creator, who just created this stick figure on a piece of paper. And this stick figure looks around, he sees white in all directions, because that's all he can see. He can't see off the page, he can only see left and right. Well, if the creator of this stick figure wanted to interact in this realm, but the creator is a three-dimensional being, right? He's not two-dimensional. You can't just jump onto the page like some sort of kid's cartoon in the 90s. So the creator takes his pencil and he stabs his pencil through the paper, piercing the veil. You've got a three-dimensional pencil sticking through the two-dimensional world of the stick figure. Well, to the stick figure, looking to the side, only seeing to the left and to the right, the stick figure would only see, there's different ways of telling this story, the details don't really matter, a dot or a line, because if you're looking at the side of a pencil in only the width of a sheet of paper, you imagine you're that stick figure, the pencil goes through, you don't see the three-dimensional, you don't see the pencil sticking on either side of the paper. All you see is this tiny little sliver. And you go, whoa, look at that little sliver. That came out of nowhere. What is that thing? That's crazy. It just appeared. And then the creator takes the pencil out and I go, oh my gosh, the thing disappeared. It appeared and disappeared. Some sort of interdimensional being. There's an interdimensional line. Well, the stick figure doesn't know that if he could only see in this third dimension, he would see that this little line that appeared and disappeared was actually this huge pencil, this alien figure, this wild thing that exists in dimensions he hasn't even thought of. And this is how we can think about interactions between the spiritual and the physical realms, and in this case, angels. We have here this monstrous sort of chimera creature with 4 heads and wings and crazy stuff going on. That is the 3-dimensional representation of an who knows how many dimensions. We can just call it omnidimensional. We don't know how many dimensions that, whatever. Let's call it 4 dimensions. We're just going to add, for the sake of conversation, we'll just add the spirit dimension to this, okay? So this angel has access to the 3 dimensions that we have, but he also has a 4th dimension. He has a spirit dimension. And just like the pencil piercing into the 3-dimensional pencil, piercing into the 2-dimensional paper, the way he appears to the inhabitants of the 3-dimensional place, that's us, we're only catching this weird little glimpse of this being, and we're missing an entire dimension of what really constitutes this full being. I hope this is making sense to people. And so same for us. I mean, I wonder, the conversation that I'm having recently is, well, we know that we have a spiritual dimension to ourselves. A lot of people claim to be able to operate and see in the spiritual dimension and this kind of thing. So we'll set that aside for now. But what if our spiritual body and our material body are just different dimensions to the same person, which is us? And when an angel appears in our 3 dimensions, all we see are those first 3 dimensions of the angel. We don't see the 4th. Which really, as you can tell from the metaphor of flatland, is the difference between seeing a line appear and disappear or a pencil piercing through our dimension. And so when I look at Enoch, I look at Elisha, I look at Jesus, I look at angels, I look at these types of things, I mean, especially the angel thing, where these are not humans. Jesus was man, so he shows up as a man in the material realm. The angels are not human beings. They have they have their own thing, and we get these descriptions from the real creme de la creme of the prophecies in the Bible. Of these terrifying beings that people are actively terrified of. And with Jesus, we know he was 100% man, 100% God, right? Which I think is now not God. Human beings are not God. But I believe that human beings are also 100% human and 100% spirit man. Maybe that's a good way to kind of think about it. Not equating ourselves with the status of Jesus as God. Jesus, 100% man, 100% God, one guy. Great example. I think most of us would agree that human beings, 100% human, but also 100% spirit person, or whatever you want to call it. And separating those two things, we just don't have a whole lot of biblical, I don't know. I don't want to say proof, but explanation on. So I know I kind of went a lot of places right there, but I think it's a really fascinating way to integrate what the Bible says with what we experience. And going back to beyond the verse, this idea that God in his creativity not just created us, but also created angels, is able to create things that are simultaneously living in multiple dimensions, in the same way that a human can draw a stick figure who now exists in 2 dimensions. God who experiences two dimensions, but from the drawer's point of view has three dimensions. In the same way, God creates man, which exists, which perceives in three dimensions, but exists in four dimensions. Again, the fourth, for sake of conversation, being this spirit dimension. I don't think it's that wacky. And I kind of went over it before, but so it might come up later, it might not come up later, but just in case anybody's hearing this Gnostic heresy thing for the first time, St. Augustine, who is maybe one of, if not the most influential previous Christian when it comes to modern Christianity, pretty much worldwide. You know, you can name a couple of those saint guys. St. Francis was a pretty big deal. You know, you can name a handful of these guys that really, really had a big hand in modern Christianity. But St. Augustine, I think, might be the number one guy. And little detail that we learned about St. Augustine was he was actually a former Gnostic. He was a heretic. And people wonder, because the separation, the distinction of what was one four-dimensional being called a human being getting described as a split personality, basically. You have a material body, you have a spirit man. Your material body is inherently made up of evil, but your spirit man is inherently good. Like, there's problems. There's bad spirit things, bad spirit beings. There's demons. They're bad, but okay, not here to rehash the Gnostic heresy. But we have a direct line through Augustine of these Gnostic heresies, which the early church thought were so bad. They thought they were so threatening. They thought they were such bad ideas that they exiled the Gnostics. The Gnostics weren't even allowed in Christian society. They had to go live out in the desert alone because of their crazy ideas. Which, look, I myself, I have a heart for the underdog. It almost makes me want to root for the Gnostics. And of course, for those who are sort of skeptical, anti-establishment, sort of conspiracy theory types, that's when you go, oh, the Gnostics had the truth, and that's why they sent them away. That's why they were kicked out, because they got too close to the truth, man. They got too close. But it's good to remember that the Gnostics were sort of the foundational group, the foundational ideology for modern occultism, for Dilemma and Order of the Golden Dawn and Aleister Crowley and what a lot of people would describe as Satanists. There's a lot of other word for it. Gnosticism is like the glowing red hot core of occultism. And so then we already know that there's, at least in Protestantism, because we don't have a pope, we don't look to one singular man to decide theology. Protestantism really is this sort of perfect environment for whoever wants to come in and bring in whatever ideas. And I feel like it's so difficult for us to even imagine. I'm not even saying anybody needs to work this into their theology. I'm not even saying that people need to change their whatever gospel message or whatever based on this idea that maybe the spirit and the flesh while different dimensions, totally different characteristics. The flesh obviously weak, the flesh obviously a primary vector for sin, which is a spiritual. This is another great example. If you think of material and spirit, the material man, the spirit man, as just different dimensions of the same object, it makes more sense why targeting the body for temptation, being a doorway for sin into the man, can corrupt the spirit. The spirit and the body are two unrelated, totally separate things. How and why is a sin of the body even important at all? If the body is inherently evil anyways, is going to burn away anyways, why would the spirit man even be affected? What's the crossover point? But if the material man and the spirit man are the same man, just different dimensions, then that makes sins of the body a perfect, significant vector, not just for defiling the body, but for gaining access to the spirit. I hope that makes sense to y'all, because it is starting to form pretty well in my brain. Let me see. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I think it's also interesting in the descriptions of these angels and the passages Gans brings up. It makes a real big point to mention the human-like appearance, but also totally monstrous, non-human appearance. The human-like face, even the faces of the lion and the ox were human-like. And even the wings had hands coming down under them. And I'm not sure if these were the descriptions of the angels or not in particular, but, another interesting image for this spirit body and material body being maybe more related than we expected. Okay, we're going to bring up now, coming here to, I'm expecting to present a thorough rebuttal of everything I just said. We're going to bring Esteban on in a second here. I want to give a shout out to 678 who just texted, says, thanks for your prayers from this dyslexic brother in arms. Thanks for putting up with my sometimes hard to decipher texts, but thanks for including the prayers. I really feel camaraderie here where there is a lack in life overall. Amen, 678. Thank you very much for that note. Yeah, I think that's one thing that's very special about the Canary Cry community as a whole, but also this fun little Canary Cry Clubhouse time, this family time we get. So remember, if you haven't done it yet, folks, take out your phone. Text the word canary to 877-740-3226. Look, I'll put it on the screen for you. I'm going through the process of putting it on the screen for you. You wouldn't let me do this in vain, would you? Surely you're using your eyeballs to look at the numbers and typing in the words. And those who are listening on the podcast version, shout out to the podcast listeners. You guys know. We've been on video for a few years now, but the podcast listeners, they've been around for decades. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and line up the timer again. Share this tab instead. And we're going to bring up Esteban here in a moment. Remember the timer, 10-minute timer. Mostly suggestion, but that's what we're shooting for. I see, I just scrolled and I see we've got a nice group here in the back room. So yes, we're probably going to keep pretty close to the timer. Here we go. Let's bring up Esteban. Esteban, you're back on, buddy. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, man? I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna try to do the 10 minutes, but if we go over, it's for a good reason. So please, um, be patient with me.
Well,
Um,
everybody knows I am nothing if not patient. However, I have grown to be such a man to want to make sure we get enough callers in. So
sure. No,
I'm
I
here's
can
what I'm gonna
understand
do.
that.
Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm sure you've got a lot to go through, so I'm actually mostly just gonna let you talk. If and then you can ask me a question if you want, but
Sure,
I'm gonna
sure.
try my best to write down anything I want to respond to. So here we go.
Oh,
Ready?
okay. Because really, this isn't what I really wanted to discuss, but I
Oh, you
will
certainly
go.
don't have to.
No, no, no. I'll address it.
Okay.
Um, um Again, this whole physical spiritual, you know look, angels, let's just start with them. um I believe their being is for whatever purposes that the Lord needs them to be. And what I mean by that is, when the Lord wanted to um get Lot and his family out of Sodom or Gomorrah, I don't know which city they were in, the Lord said, go get those people out. And if you read in Genesis, I believe it's 16 or 17, um, they had to they had to physically grab uh, Lot and his family. So they didn't go to Lot in spiritual form. They had to physically grab the guy because he was being lethargic and dilly-dallying, and judgment was about to come.
Mm-hmm.
You look
Right.
a chapter or two or somewhere around there where Hagar is sitting under the tree crying, and an angel appears to her. No physical interaction, but that doesn't mean that the angel still could not be seen by her. So,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the Lord, angels are just messengers, and they do whatever the Lord commands.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when Paul had the vision of the beasts and all of that stuff, that was a purpose for um, the Holy Spirit to give a vision to John. And so, but I do know this, and Paul wrote about it in the New Testament, I believe. He said, you know, be mindful of whom you interact with, for some have entertained angels unaware.
Mm-hmm.
And in the context of what he was talking about human beings, fellow people. So again, the fact that angels can appear in human form and
Or
do
physical
physical
form.
things, or physical form, because remember, it was angels who moved the stone
Mm-hmm.
from Christ's tomb. So I just think, when it comes to them, and especially the Lord, the rules are different than us. Now, I agree.
I
I
don't.
think we're no, no, no. They are different for us, and there's a
I'm
reason for
I'm
that.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I There's literally nothing that you've said that is incongruous with anything that I've said. Just to be clear, I don't know if that's
Sure.
your perception or not, but everything you've said is right along the lines of where I'm coming from.
Right. And so, um, it just so the rules are different for them. Now, Christ being, and by the way, it was the Holy Spirit that came upon Mary for Christ to be a physical embryo and to be a baby and so forth. So it's not just when we say we're born into sin, it's not just physically, but spiritually we are dead. And Paul says that in the New Testament.
Yep. Which is, again,
Because,
a problem, which is, again, one of the problems with the Gnostic heresy that I see.
right. So we are spiritually born dead because, and that's the most important, because when we leave this physical body, it's not our physical body that's going to be cast into hell if we don't accept Christ. So, they're three separate, but they're one, like the Trinity. And so I just say, the we can't exactly expect to have the same privileges of the rules as the person who created us. And so
I
that's
think we can both agree on that. Yeah, that's totally fine. I have no problem with anything you said. So if there was something else you wanted to
right.
chat about, you can go ahead and take it from
Right.
there.
The main thing I wanted to speak about, because you did bring it up earlier, very, very earlier, and I'm getting very, very extremely concerned with what's going on in the world today, this whole thing with Israel and Iran, and you know I said to my pastor this past Tuesday after prayer, I said it's not from the political left or liberals. I said it's from the right or so-called Christians. Listen, I'm just going to flat out say it. I think replacement theology is the most dangerous heresy in the church, even more so than social justice or the prosperity gospel or whatever else you want to call it. And what I mean by replacement theology is that the Lord is done with Israel. And we've got people have just been running wild with the interview Tucker Carlson did with Ted Cruz. Number one, it's Ted Cruz, and he's a blithering idiot. And I consider myself a quote, or others would consider me a quote unquote right winger or conservative. And I've always said that I think Ted Cruz is an idiot.
Yeah, that's one thing I think we could all agree on.
Okay, but this notion that, and again, let me just say, the accusation of being a shill for the Zionists and a shill for Israel, and they can do no wrong and all. Listen, the Lord is not beyond punishing Israel when they do wicked and wrong things. Hello, only two people from an entire generation made it to the promised land. Just two. The Lord destroyed the rest of them in the desert. So, and I personally believe that the tribulation is also going to be their time where, the Lord's going to wipe them out for their wickedness and preserve a few. That's, when the church is raptured. And so this notion about, well, the Lord wasn't talking about modern day Israel and he wasn't talking about this, and this is a Zionist puppet state. And listen, okay, the USS Liberty, 9/11, they APAC, they bribe our, they blackmail our politicians. All of that is true. All of that is true. But the promise that the Lord made to Abraham, I mean, people want to separate Jacob, his grandsons, and his great grandsons. They're trying to say that's not Israel. And it's like, The guy's literally the grandfather and the great grandfather of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Yeah,
Just
I'm
because
having a
they
hard.
weren't called, just because they weren't called quote unquote Jews then, does not mean that that's still not. It's just I'm like, what are we doing here? Because I can
Yeah,
tell you, replacement
I'm
theology is the seeds to anti-Semitism.
sure. Yeah, and I guess that's kind of what I'm asking is I'm actually having a hard time kind of understanding your position on this. So you're saying, I'm assuming you're saying specifically in the Iran conflict here. Is your point that you're for getting involved with the
No,
Israel-Iran conflict?
actually, no, I'm not for getting involved per se. And what I mean by getting involved, do I think we should put boots on the ground and bomb? Absolutely not. But that doesn't mean that we still cannot stand with and support them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a
Yeah.
difference.
So you're under your position is that the modern state of Israel is the carries with it the promises to biblical Israel.
Well, I believe that, but just in case, because people love saying this modern day Israel, let me ask you a question. Was there a country of Israel when Christ walked the earth? No, there
Uh,
wasn't, because
yeah,
they were
the
under the rule of the
nation
Romans.
states, yeah, didn't quite exist at the time, but yes, right.
Okay, then. So there was no Israel when Christ was there.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a point that somebody. I mean, I think it's interesting because that is a point that somebody who disagrees with you would also make. Is that biblical Israel? Which, by the way, just to be clear, yes, if people are quoting that they must biblically stand by Israel, they also need to recognize that yes, God also has had a long history of getting in this cycle with the Hebrew people where when they start doing bad stuff starts happening to them.
yes,
And,
because they rebel.
there would certainly be some people, and I think there'd be some people on both sides that might look at some actions by Israel recently and been like, I don't know if that's exactly what you should be doing. So it's interesting because, and maybe this is kind of where you stand, which I think is a good position. Not to say it's a middle position, but I think it's perhaps an intellectually honest position, which is when it comes to Israel, whether or not the nation state of Israel or the descendants of the people of Israel who now inhabit the nation state of Israel, both of those things could be true, by the way.
Well,
At
I'm
the
going to
same
get to that. I'm
time,
going to get to that. Yeah, yeah,
right
because
at
you have
this,
a
well, hold on.
respectfully, you have a.
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
Let me just
Go ahead.
finish the sentence and then I'll let you go off.
Go ahead.
In
I'm
the
sorry.
same time, at the same time, those two things can be true. Also, the same two things could be true that God is caring for, watching over, shepherding, whatever commands us to stand by Israel. If it's the people of of the descendants of the tribes of Israel, that might be people in the nation of Israel, but at the same time, he promises judgment on Israel all the time. So both of those things can be true.
Right, and unfortunately, and I'm just going to flat out. I'm just going and you have an idiot in the comments section by the name of Titus Frost. It's people like this. It's people like this that is proving my point right here that the real Israels are white Europeans and Christ is not a descendant of Shem. He's a descendant of Japheth, who is the progenitor of the European. I mean, this is why we have to have. This is why I say, and this guy would be considered a quote unquote right wing. So it's not the left. It's not the left we have to worry about. It's the so-called right who claim to be Christians.
Yep,
And
that's
so
true. I will
again,
say
and I am not. I
Titus,
am. Go
I'll
ahead.
just mention Titus Frost does cause trouble wherever he goes, and he's
Well,
very good at that. So,
he's a moron. But here's the thing. It proves my point. And this is, I am not sitting here saying that Israel is not a wicked nation. In fact, they are. In fact, I don't know if people, I mean, they're the world's largest distributor of porn. The world's largest gay pride sodomite parade is Tel Aviv. They are not a holy nation. But when the Lord made a promise to Abraham, it wasn't based on whether they would be holy and righteous or not. That's why Christ came.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
Christ came in the first place. And so, and this notion about, well, listen, and again, keep in mind, Abraham was before the law. And it says it right there in Genesis 12 that Abraham was made righteous because he believed. And this is before the law. So
Yeah.
Abraham in heaven wasn't baptized, didn't have the law, had no concept of what the law was. He had faith in God, and it was counted to
Yep.
him as righteous. And
That's
so,
a great point. Esteban, I think you make a
so,
great point there, buddy. I appreciate you
so,
bringing your perspective. I just want to give you a heads up. We're about 5 minutes over the 10 minutes. I think it was
yeah, I
very
hear you. I appreciate it.
valuable
I
time
appreciate it.
spent. So I'll let you finish up your statement, and then we'll take another caller.
I just want to say, like I said, I just think this replacement theology is really, really dangerous. And I think it might be one of the, if I'm not saying it's the main thing, because we always have heresies in the church, prosperity gospel, the acceptance of this whole trans nonsense and all of that. But I think replacement theology is going to be one of the catalysts for the great falling away. And when Christ
Yeah,
mentions the great falling away, he's talking about believers.
I think you're right there as well. Well,
So
thank you so much,
just
buddy.
dangerous, just dangerous.
Yeah, appreciate your perspective and appreciate you laying it out for us. Thanks for calling in. Hope to talk to you again,
Roger that,
pal.
brother. All right.
Bye. Yeah, the replacement theology or dispensationalism, that's also become a pretty mainstream conversation I've been seeing on X because the claim is, and to call it a claim is not to necessarily call it factually untrue, but the Schofield Bible, or some people say the Schofield Bible, um, is one of the, I mean, that's kind of where that started becoming a mainstream theological point. And people have been digging through and finding various historical points about Schofield and his Bible and the funding and things of that. And I think it's very interesting the ways that we can see certain historical movements take on different, I don't know, not different meanings per se, but different relevances and the twists and turns of history makes it very messy. Okay, next up, we've got on the list our Russian handler called in. I'm going to put you on the stage here, a wonderful Russian handler. How are you?
Good, good.
Oops. There you are. Well, good. Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
What's happened since last week?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But the way I like to think about the body and the spirit is hardware, software type of thing. I mean, it's not an exact match, but I think it's the closest we came to describe it.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that's a great, at least metaphor for talking about it. Because yes, the hardware needs software, and the software needs hardware. We're learning that with Flippy and the AI right now.
Correct. And it all comes down to, well, God made us for a purpose. And, but through the fall, our flesh got corrupted. And, but it still comes down to the purpose. I mean, for the lack of a better term, it's like God's running the show on a 13-year-old computer.
Yeah,
And it's failing. And but as long as you're doing what you're supposed to and not running any other software you're not supposed to,
yeah.
it'll be
No,
okay.
that's a great point. I think that is the most accessible way to think about it. And also, I find it very interesting. We often talking about how the digital, the technocrats and the digital cyberneticists and the technology people, are finding very interesting ways to counterfeit spiritual reality through digital reality. And, we talk about the digital world and how their, beast system endeavors are looking to counterfeit the spiritual reality to draw people away from, truly knowing God, but satisfying that human desire for spirit through these digital worlds and digital machines. I think it lines up quite well in both in a literal sense and in the metaphorical sense, because if the spirit part of us is software and the body part of us is hardware, and they both kind of work with one another. And, oftentimes we've all been there where the software, for no reason, just isn't right, just isn't working. And then it takes, somebody to come in, install an upgrade, install a new firmware, update the software or whatever. And you can kind of think about, Jesus, I would say God, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus, and his death and resurrection being kind of a software update for the corrupted files in the sort of human spirit software. I think that's a great way to do it. You're a genius, our Russian handler. Thank you for coming in and giving me the language that I had been searching for so fervently.
Well, it's not me, really. I'm pretty dumb.
You're
Once
wonderful.
in a while, I think God gives me a little bit of insight when I ask for it.
Hey, he uses all of us.
I've struggled myself, but I found that if you ask, I don't understand this right now, so you're going to have to explain it.
Amen. And we should all remember that is the best way to make it through not only the events and the times and the history, but these little problems in our life. In my experience, a lot of times, just handing over the responsibility to God to figure this stuff out is pretty much always the answer in one way or another. It's nice. Yeah, I'm
learning. Unfortunately, the best I learn is a personal bad example and not by watching others.
Yeah. Well, isn't that how it goes, though? It's just kind of the way. Again, why did God choose to make us the way we are? I do not know, but we do know he had a plan, and whatever faults that we do have, they're just an awesome opportunity for God to show up and show off a little bit.
Correct. I gotta go. I have my own handlers here calling my name. So.
Okay. Say hi to the handlers for me. Thanks for calling in. Okay. Cute. That's very fun. Thank you to our Russian handler. Why didn't I think of that? I mean, it's right there. I mean, surely we've talked about that before. It's interesting. Sometimes we have the language that we're searching for. We've had it. We've used it. It's there, and we just miss it. We just can't see it. And that's when your Russian handler calls you and sets you straight. Thank you very much. All right, next on the docket, we've got Modern Day Bible Study. Going to reset the timer here, and boop, here we go. Modern Day Bible Study. How are you?
To the heavens, Basil. How are you?
Amen, sister. Amen, sister.
Well, underneath my title, it says, "Is material evil?" Now, I would not say I'm Gnostic. In fact, I only hear, what you discuss about Gnosticism. However, I have read a lot of the apocryphal scriptures. Well, I shouldn't say scriptures because they were banned for a reason. But apocryphal actually means hidden. So it is hidden for those that are searching. And I will just say from personal experience that is material evil, because during COVID, I moved 8 times since now, actually.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and when you have to move all of your belongings and all of your material stuff, I mean, I kept asking, yeah, like, why do I have so much stuff, even though I feel like I have so little? But to move all of that and, to use the gas and your energy, I mean, it made me stronger, but the struggle of just like, what do I need? And whatever has come with me, I mean, it's been such a blessing because we ourselves are material. However, you also think about when people pass away, all of the things that they leave behind, you don't take that with you to heaven. So I guess when you were saying earlier how material is evil in the Gnostic belief, I can see how it weighs us down and how it doesn't. I mean, we focus so much on the material that we completely ignore the spirit. Now, to get to the four cherubim, if you don't have this material holding you down, then you are able to be more connected to the spirit. And what Esteban was saying, I mean, I hear this all the time. And with the left wing and the right wing, look at the four cherubim. They have 6 wings. So why are we focusing on, a corrupted left wing and a right wing when we should be focusing on the entire encasement that is holding us in protection? And with the material, I mean, you think about politics, they're controlling the material.
Yeah. Oops, did I lose you? Oh, we might have lost her. Just for a second. She'll be back. She'll be back. Do you guys hear me? I think I'm still here. Yeah, I'm still here.
Am I back?
Oh, I heard you for a second. There you are.
Okay, sorry. Somebody was calling me, of course, so they didn't want me to say
Oh,
more.
it happens. I see. It happens. Yeah,
So
well, it's I think you make a good point. I mean, it is, again, in talking about this, the way that I'm trying to find a way to talk about it. Yeah, I'm not trying to give the impression that, like, I don't know, the body is more important than the spirit or something. I mean, I don't even actually know exactly what I'm trying to say as far as like level of importance. But, if we, it feels like those who I know who consider their body as another equally as important sort of tool for righteousness and holiness and obedience and things like that, instead of just like a piece of trash that they can't wait to get rid of. That since it is the primary vector, and maybe not the primary vector, but obviously a very important vector for sin, that if it's that dangerous to commit sins of the body, then how much more beneficial is it to make choices with our bodies that glorify God, that are good for our spirit? Fasting's a great example. To deny the sort of gluttonous lifestyle that we're so accustomed to, even just fasting for little bits of time. I mean, you find tremendous benefit to the spirit man. And, it's a great example of this sort of back and forth, that the body is also a wonderful vector for God, for obedience, to benefit the spirit man, because perhaps they are just two different dimensions of the same created object. And what's, good for the left hand is good for the right. And that goes vice versa. What's bad for the body is bad for the spirit. What's bad for the spirit is also bad for the body.
Absolutely. And, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. But you said it earlier, actually, I think it was after the Beyond the Verse, but you said the body and the soul are conflicting, and yet together they're united and they work off hand in hand. So you are absolutely right, with fasting and everything like that, because our spirit works off of what we do here. We are here for a reason in this I think we get that wrong when we say that the body is material. No, the body is a temple. It is something to worship. I mean, not for
Yeah.
us to worship, but to use it to worship our creator. And
Yeah.
and that is what
That
we
is
are
a
here
great
for.
point. Yeah.
So if you look at the body as material, then of course you're just going to keep feeding it material things. But if you look at it as a spiritual vessel, like just as Jesus came on this earth as a man, just what was being described in Daniel, is that maybe that was prophetic for the lion to come here as a man with the mind of a man, because then he could show us how to worship and to see properly, to see through the body that has fleshly desires. And if you think about desire, that is not material. That is, a spiritual realm. So that's where I don't believe with Gnosticism, is that the spirit is pure, because there are so many spirits out there that are very evil, and they can do very evil things to a good, faithful spirit. So I believe that the spirit is faithful when you use it properly, but it can also be very deceptive, which is the times that we're living in right now, which, that's the counterfeit beast, isn't it? Because that is also a spiritual realm, just like the four cherubim.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. That's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, that's great. I mean, the point about the temple is great because as well, because yeah, if the very molecules of our material body were made of evil substance, then it's a very interesting thing for Jesus to come and let everybody know that the temple is not made of stone. The temple is your body.
Yeah.
Now, there's obviously he's here to redeem everything, and he could redeem, an inherently evil material realm. In fact, that's one of his sort of core principles.
Yeah.
But Jesus himself recognized the the importance of the body in very different ways than were recognized at the time by the sort of majority uh, religious class there. So I think that's
Yeah.
great. Well,
Yeah. And I'm sorry, one more
no,
thing is
yeah,
that and when the rich man came to Jesus and asked, how can he follow him in the best way, and what did Jesus tell him? He said, sell all of your possessions and you will follow me. And it was so difficult for him to do, and we never found out what truly happened, but that was the biggest message for all of us, is that it's so tough to let go. And during my spiritual awakening, I pictured myself with just chains and baggage all around me, just things I was holding on to. And then you just lift all of that up and you just let it go. And once you let it go, then you are able to just to be free and to find your true spirit.
yeah. Amen. Well, thank you so much for calling in Modern Day Bible Study. Really appreciate that. It's great to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Take care.
Talk to you next time. God bless.
Bye.
Look at all you guys making great points. See, okay, so this is good. This is I like it that it's not just my responsibility to come on here and bring some sort of uh, unknown wisdom. Sometimes it's for me to receive the wisdom that already exists out there. So I like that very much. Yeah, and Modern Day Bible Study was mentioning the rich man who found it difficult to sell everything he had and give up his wealth and things like that. And it's very interesting because that's, wealth is often considered sort of a fleshly problem, when attachment to wealth, I think, could very much be considered primarily a sort of problem of the spirit. Next up, we've got Sir David G calling in. I'll bring you up here, Sir David G. How are you, buddy? You're on the air. What's on your mind?
I'm great, buddy. How you doing?
Doing good. Just living and learning.
Living the dream, right?
Yeah. I like your new logo there.
That's I started my own electrical company. It's
Ooh,
in its
doggy.
infancy stage, so that's part of the logo for it. So.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
That's going to be very helpful when society collapses and people don't have YouTube to go on and learn how to install solar systems.
Oh, trust me, I've been preaching the trades for at least the past 10 years since I started. Um, because you can just see, especially with the way they're trying to push AI and robots and all of that. I would like to see an AI robot do what I do. Now, they might be able to understand the theory and the concepts, but when it comes to abstract thinking, how to solve a particular problem, I think I don't think they have what it takes, to think creatively like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a very special kind of mind.
And to fit in tight spaces that I'm not a big guy, so I can fit into some interesting spaces that other people can't. So
Bro.
I'd like to see a robot do that.
Yeah, you're not joking, dude. I get stuck inside these walls all the time trying to fix stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's interesting you call in because right after this show, actually, I'm going over to troubleshoot somebody's solar system, and I'm thinking, I am not a professional. I do not have insurance for this sort of thing. I do not want to destroy what they have. Um, and maybe that's something I need to do is get some sort of umbrella coverage for getting zapped helping out the neighbor.
Well, we don't talk offline, but I'm always here to answer any questions you might have if you need help with stuff like that.
That's great, man. I may very well have to do that. That's very generous of you.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
when it comes to theory, I've never really worked with much solar. I do a lot of DC
Uh-huh.
for a three-letter telecom company who shall not be named, because I don't know if I could say it publicly, but I do a lot in their buildings.
Cool.
So I'm familiar with, DC voltage and DC voltage, DC current, and those types of electrical systems. So
Sweet. Okay. Well, I think I have your email, so I'll definitely reach
yeah,
out if I need something.
yeah, for sure.
All
Um,
right. Well, anything else been on your mind?
Actually, a lot. It's been on my heart a lot lately, the past few weeks, and I've tried to call in a couple of the times, and just lost um, the drive, not the drive, but
The
just the desire.
motivation?
Yeah, to talk about it. And I just kind of dipped out. But today, for some reason, man, I came in, you know, the chat was hot. There's
Chat is hot.
there's lots of words being thrown around. Um, but what I've been thinking about is I see it in the church. I see it in people I deal with. I see it YouTube channels online. I see it a lot of places, and that is, we all read the same book. We all believe in the same God. Why why do we all choose to divide ourselves in ways, or getting stuck into ideas or ways of thinking about any particular topic within the realm of the Bible and our belief? We get stuck in interpretations, in I see it this way, you see it that way. So therefore, I'm going to place myself on this pedestal and look down upon you and treat you in a certain way that we're literally told, don't treat people like that. Wow.
Right.
And I see it everywhere, man. And it's so heartbreaking. And it really, it's what keeps so many non-believers away, is because um, people see the hypocrisy. Have you, somebody sent me that new Jack White song, that video with what's his face, the guy from Step Brothers. I'm having a brain fart right now.
Will
Um,
Ferrell or something?
no, the other guy, John. Not John. Anyway,
Yeah,
it doesn't
John
matter.
John C. Riley.
Yes, yes. And it's a great video, and and the lyrics to the song. It's a good song actually too. But the point of it all is, you know, it's basically the preacher saying, "Come to me, because I'm the way." Right? I'm
Right.
the one who's gonna get you closer to God. And I feel like a lot of us get trapped in that, and we, especially in this realm, because just go down the litany of different topics. Is the Earth flat? Is it spherical? It's a never-ending list of things that we choose to say, yes, that makes sense to me. I believe that. Therefore, I have this special inside knowledge. Therefore, I'm special. Therefore, I'm better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I think it was Mark Twain who said it's easier to make someone believe a lie than to tell them they've been lied to. We sort of get very attached to these things. And if I was going to be very gracious about it, I think the most gracious way that I could come at it is to say when you really believe something, and it could be something small, it could be something big, it could be something, again, if you're talking biblical interpretations or this or that or theology, whatever, especially spiritual things, is very difficult because when you finally come to the position where you believe something, that fact or that idea doesn't stand alone. It gets integrated into what we believe about everything. And I think that's why it's very difficult to change people's minds, and also why people get so fired up about seemingly sort of small differences with people. Not to say that all differences are small, there are big ones. But, if let's just say we were talking about, I don't know, what's like a little thing? I don't know. Let's say Jesus broke bread vertically versus horizontally, and somebody believes that Jesus broke bread horizontally. The other person
right.
believes they broke bread vertically, and because they believe this, it's not just a fun little factoid that's like stored away in a filing cabinet, but because they believe this, they break their own bread vertically or horizontally.
Mhm.
And they look around and they see other people breaking it either the right way or the wrong way. And they feel that they belong with the people that break it the right way, and they don't belong with the people who break it the wrong way. And you come along and you say, actually, Jesus broke the bread diagonally. And it's not just a fun idea that gets, one file gets taken out of the filing cabinet and a new file gets put in, because that little file, the horizontal vertical bread breaking file, affects 100 other little files. So when you're pulling out one file and putting a new fact in or whatever, we kind of think that it's just changing one fact, when in reality I think every little thing like that is way more ingrained, it's way more entrenched, and it's not that they find identity because of the fact it was broken horizontally, but because they believed it was cut horizontally. That little file connects to a bunch of identity files, like really important. This is who I am. This is where I belong. This is whatever. It's kind of a crazy example, but we think about little pieces of information that kind of get swapped out, like fiction for truth, that kind of thing. And that's that. But really, somebody changing their mind about something is not just learning new data. It's you got to go into all the filing cabinets and replace all the places that weird little fact has sort of fit in to build your identity. Does that make sense?
100%. And
Woo.
it likens, well, man, I'm having trouble finding the right words, but
Dude, welcome to the club, bro.
It fits perfectly with the idea of be as a little child, right? And what are they? They're a blank slate, right?
Yeah.
They know they
Yeah.
don't know anything, so they look up to others, right? Their parents, adults who have the knowledge, and they seek to know and to understand.
There are a bunch of empty filing cabinets. You can just
Yeah,
put whatever you want in there. And some of us have had stuff in that filing cabinet for decades that some adult just threw in there willy-nilly, not thinking it would come up later. And then it comes up decades later, and you find out that somebody put a piece of garbage in your filing cabinet. I, I've found out, this was in the past maybe 10 years, so it's been a while now. But my dad is just a great example. I grew up in a sort of smaller town, and this smaller town had an airport. And obviously, it was a small airport. I had never flown out of it. And one day I'm driving by it, and I asked my dad, like, why don't we ever fly out of this airport? Is it because they have small planes? And he goes, no, they fly big 747s out of that airport, which he obviously was being sarcastic about, just having some fun, you know. But I filed in my brain that they flew 747s out of that airplane for like 25 years. I believed this until one day it just came out in a conversation. I just said, oh, you know, they fly 747s at that airplane, at that airport. And everybody around me was like, are you crazy? What are you talking about? And I go, why do I? Oh, my dad told me that. Oh, my dad told me that 25 years. Oh, my gosh. I've had this fake piece of information. Luckily, it's just like a useless piece of information. But that stuff, those kids, man, they file stuff away. And, you know, you might not think it's important, but it turns out it embarrasses them in front of their peers 25 years later.
Yeah, that's the thing about being a parent is, you know, even when you're not around, you're still teaching them lessons, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. Do you have kids,
So
Sir David?
I do. I have two. I have
Oh,
a boy and
good.
a girl. Yeah, my daughter's turning 7 in 7 days in a week.
Oh my goodness. Oh my good.
Yeah,
Your kids are similar ages, it sounds like, to Gonza's.
yeah, pretty close. They're
Cool.
they changed my life, man. And you know, I have to say that to stay in line with this conversation, I really am grateful to God that I'm just a big stupid dummy when it comes to the Bible, because I look up to a lot of you guys, especially a lot of the people in the chat, because your wealth of biblical knowledge is so vast. And at the same time, it keeps me from falling into that trap of thinking that my interpretation is correct or that I know everything, because it's so dangerous. It's, I mean, what was Satan's, you know, what caused him to do what he did, thinking that he could be better than God or like God, right? I mean, just a lesser being cannot be a greater being, right? So
Yeah.
ultimately, what the point I'm trying to make is this: what's the point? Even if you knew everything correctly in the Bible, even if you got it 100% spot on, what difference does it make? What good
Yeah.
does it do you
Yeah.
if you know you're still acting like everybody else in the world acts?
It's no
Okay,
better than the grace you were already given. The
exactly.
the grace that the gift of salvation and the grace that was already extended to you, it doesn't get any better just because you know more about the Bible.
But it also just puts you in a position, a dangerous position, in my opinion, to have the pride that the Jews had that crucified Christ.
Yeah, I mean that is the Pharisaical sort of archetype. Pharisees and Sadducees, the smartest guys, the most well-read guys, the most respected guys. Everybody came to them for all their problems and for all their knowledge. And that is precisely why Jesus interacted with them so often. It's a
Hmm.
great example. And, you know, it's funny because if you bring that up with anybody, they'll say, of course, the Pharisees were the bad guys. The Sadducees were the bad guys. They were great example of what not to do in the world. And then, you know, it just doesn't stick. We got these blind spots sometimes.
Exactly. And I tend to ask a lot of non-believers when we start talking about Jesus and the Bible and all that stuff, I tend to ask them, who was Jesus's number one enemy? And 9 times out of 10, they say, "Oh, well, the Romans." And I'm like, no. Who had him put to death? He's like, "Oh, well, the Romans did that. Pontius Pilate." I don't think so. I mean, he carried out the act, yes, but
Yeah, I
it
think
wasn't.
I think it's very interesting that that's how it turned out. Like, I think there's a lot of really rich spiritual information in
Mhm.
just precisely that little switch 'em up, that little mix 'em up, that because when you get down to it, everybody played a hand in it. And
Yes,
even those who didn't want to play a hand in it had to play a hand in it. Pontius Pilate washed his hands of it, of course, but it was
exactly.
still his men. So it's another example of like this, because I could see someone, or the implication is, and I'm not saying that you're saying this, but if it didn't happen the way that it happened, when somebody says the Romans didn't do it, the Jews did it. You go, oh, I see. Okay, so the Jews were the bad guy. Or somebody else goes, no, no, no. The Romans killed Jesus. The Jews, they didn't actually hammer the nails. Oh, okay, okay. So it's the Romans who are the bad guy. But instead, you have this really rich and complex web of human beings totally opposed to one another. Absolutely opposed to one another. The Romans and the Jews together both played a role in the event that was the salvation of humanity. No, and kind of the point of the gospel in the first place is that nobody is innocent. And it kind of turned out in a similar way. And you could argue back and forth about, well, the Jews wouldn't have done that if the Romans weren't occupying and the Jews were looking for a military savior. So really, the Romans were the ones. You could go back and forth like you can with pretty much any conflict in
Hmm.
history. But, it's just a beautiful way for God to have played out that event to where, again, the real truth, the deep truth of it was, now everybody had blood on their hands. Everybody played their own little part, even if they weren't some sort of evil villain, even if they were just a bystander doing nothing, even if they were this or that, which is kind of the core of the gospel, which is all have fallen. We are all responsible for Christ's death. He died for each and every one of our sins. And if somebody else could have been perfect, he wouldn't have had to die. God could have, if you could have lived a perfect life, heck, maybe we didn't need Jesus. Is the very fact that all of us have fallen short makes all of us complicit in Christ's death. And again, like most things, dialing in and making it a life or death sort of conversation about, who was it, the Jews or the Romans, not, again, most grace I can muster is just not the point. It's just sort of missing the point type of thing.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to make a definitive statement. I'm just making the point of that. Yes, the Romans carried out the act, but it was also the Pharisees that wanted him dead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
No,
they
sorry. I
they.
didn't mean to give the impression I thought you were making a case one way or the other.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
But
Um,
the way I see it, for the Pharisees, the Romans were just a scapegoat. That, oh, we didn't do it, they did it, right? But in their hearts, right, they wanted him dead. So we know what Jesus said about what's going on in your heart is more important than you know uh,
yeah.
maybe
No, absolutely.
how you look on the outside, I guess is the way to put it. But
And
anyway,
if I
bro, I could go on
really,
there.
yeah, we are. I'll say one more thing and then we can. If we really want to make people mad, you can be gracious towards the Pharisees and say, yes, well, the Pharisees did play their role in killing Jesus because they were looking for a military Messiah. They thought they needed something that they didn't actually need. and they thought this random guy was getting in the way and was, keeping them bound by the Romans. They were looking for a David type to come and fight, and then this other guy comes around just talking nonsense, totally against their their understanding of their covenant with God. How could they have known that there was a new covenant? I mean, I imagine sometimes now, like, what if some guy started walking around saying, okay, everybody, all right, Christians, don't worry. There's a new covenant. You heard of the old covenant. You love the new covenant. And now I've got the new covenant. It's like, what? Do you put this guy in jail? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So anyway, such a pleasure to talk to you, Sir David.
Yeah,
Thank you
man.
very much
You
for
too.
calling in, buddy. God bless.
For sure. God bless. And just one last thing.
Okay.
I love this show. It's almost like church for me.
Oh, here we go.
And I want to say to everybody in the chat, I love y'all too.
This is beautiful. This is beautiful. See, we're a big one. Happy family here, folks.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, man. Talk to you later.
Take it easy. Yeah, the podcast listeners, you're a little bit separated from the chat, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you should be grateful for that. But the chat has it's been a little hot today. Some hot topics. So there you go. Okay, that's what are we looking at? A little over 2 hours. It's just about a show. We got one more caller in the back room, I think, unless he's just like hanging out. He might just be hanging out, but we'll give it a go. We'll see if he wants to come up on stage. Sir Darren, Knight of the Hungry Panda, hanging out. Here we go. Coming up on stage. What's up, Sir Darren? How are you?
Hey, Basil. I'm doing great.
Good. What's on your mind today?
Oh, a lot of things. I think there was a video we watched earlier. I don't remember
There was
what
a
that was
video.
about.
I know. It was so long ago.
It was interesting. I guess, anyway, we've diverted topics, so I'll go on to the diverted topic now.
Whatever makes sense to you. There are no rules, just right.
Yeah. It's interesting, this topic we were talking about. I really find it interesting. The reason why it's almost like we're all kind of going back to this idea of the fifth generation warfare aspect that's going on today. And I don't know if even that term, fifth generation, is something that we should be aware of or if it has some significance. But I notice a lot of the conversations with people where we're sort of pegging anything on our doctrine or even ideas is very much based in like the fear of someone will divide and conquer or spread misinformation, or we're fearful that, someone else is saying it the wrong way. Oh, there's going to be a great falling away. Oh, we're afraid of the mark of the beast. Oh, we're afraid of the Antichrist. We're afraid what's going to happen with the judgment. It's just like, man, it is a lot of fear this, fear that. And what's interesting is, the Bible says that there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. And also talks about that, without love, everything we could know everything. We could know all the knowledge. We could know all the prophecies, but without love, it means nothing. And so I think we all need to kind of like remember and remind ourselves that when we're coming in here and saying, oh, did you know about this? Or do you know about that? And I need to start to prove a point. We need to really just recalibrate and say, are we doing this in love? Because if we're not doing it in love, we're not, number one, we're not helping each other. And number two, we are not being salt and light to the world and drawing people close to us. Because I have many conversations, biblical conversations with people that are politically very far opposed from me often. And I have to do everything with them in love, because I have to remind myself that if we are brothers and sisters in the faith, that is of the utmost importance in everything we're discussing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise
Yeah.
it just creates more division, and we end up, they won't even listen to anything I have to say. But it's so funny because how many times they'll be like, wow, that's such an amazing point or something, because I will frame it in a way of making sure I'm reminding myself that I need to act and speak in love towards them. And even just in the loving way of maybe listening to why they're saying what they're saying.
I mean, and even harder to do is not just do it with people you share the faith with, but also people you don't share the faith with. But you're right. I mean, it is amazing. It is like a secret weapon that A, is hard to learn, and B, is hard to remember. And it very much is the case that it's not so much what you say to somebody, it's how you say it. And this, I have found, works in so many different situations. And the fact that it is like a core teaching of Christ, I think, is an oft forgotten little tip. You know, it's not to be like Masonic about it or something, because, you know, the several of those groups, they take the words of Jesus and the actions of Jesus, and they kind of just apply it to like, this is how you are good at business, or this is how you make friends and influence people. Or if you're in the CIA, Jesus was the first CIA agent. He teaches me how to be an espionage man. A little callback there for anybody. But although it is not all those things, it, you know, Jesus's words apply in every situation, in every conversation, with every conversation partner. It is very interesting, because it goes against everything that we sort of not only feel, but want to feel. We don't want, like, there are sometimes, I mean, especially on the internet, getting into something on the internet, on X or whatever, I've just stopped doing it because it's a waste of my time. And it makes me feel bad. It doesn't make me feel good to do that. But there's something about operating in this sort of like digital realm, keyboard warrior style or whatever. And there are times in person that this applies too, where you actually kind of just want to make the person feel small or bad or wrong or whatever. And I will stop and think, oh, do I actually want to change this person's perspective? Does this person want their perspective changed? And the answer is usually no to both. So why not just speak in love? Even for the sake of just doing it. Just doing it because it's good for me and, you know, makes God happy. Even if it's sort of a fruitless endeavor, it's not fruitless when you're making God happy. That's helpful
Well,
for
and
me.
again, too, I don't think I'm trying to say speak in love in like this very hippy dippy flowery way of we're only going to say things that sound nice to people.
No.
Like, I think that we do need to challenge people as well.
Yeah.
You know, and that's very important. But I think that we need to be wise about the way in which we are challenging them. And like you said on X, I mean, granted, I know I've gone into certain spaces and other areas of the internet where, hey, you know what? This is just the Wild West. We're just going to go at it because it
Yeah.
is what it is. And that's fun to do from time to time. I don't mind that. Like if the chat gets heated, that's just YouTube. That's just the way it is.
It's recreational.
Yeah. But I think what we can also remember is for ourselves is that when we're acting in love, truly, we can have these challenging conversations, but we need to do it in maybe ways that we're not detriments to our own arguments. Because then when we potentially ruin our own credibility very quickly,
Yeah.
it's like, now what? you're not changing anybody's mind at this point, because except your own little clique group that maybe you got to follow you that already had your similar thinking and ideas.
Totally. Absolutely, man.
And
That's a great
that's
point.
actually, I think, part of like why I mentioned the fifth generation warfare idea, is because that seems to be somewhat of the end goal, is to create some of these camps of division, simply because it does divide and conquer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the agitation. It's agitprop, agitation propaganda. Like it is so clear that like 99% of the information that will come across your feed is just pure agitprop on purpose. Because the chaos of a bunch of worked up people, is beneficial to whoever is doing whatever. It's a great way to just kind of, most insultingly, when you're responding to agitprop or you're unable to recognize it and you get sucked in, and I mean, it's a huge part of what Gonz and I have to do on a daily basis is like recognize agitprop versus what's actual anything that needs to be addressed. Because playing into the agitprop, it feels good. It feels good to get fired up about this thing. It feels good to make fun of whoever deserves to be made fun of at the time. It feels good to, especially in a community like ours where it's like, let's all gather around and make fun of Bill Gates type of thing. Ooh, what's the next fun thing to make fun of Bill Gates for? Something like that. And just keeping in mind, oh, hey, my agitation is the goal of whatever they're trying to do here. So, well, Lord help me.
And I think, I guess too, it's also sort of plays into this idea of, we get sucked into the rabbit holes and the rabbit trails of whatever sort of idea is in the spectrum at the moment, and we'll kind of go down it. And I liken it a lot to like fast food. Like fast food is really tasty, maybe for some people, not everyone, but it's tasty, it's good. But if you eat it all day, you'll be unhealthy. Well, a lot of this stuff too with online that we look into, investigate, like you said, it could be just agitation on purpose, because who's really selling something and getting rich off it? It is the people selling these narratives that either are agitating or they're just rabbit trails to kind of lead you down rabbit holes of nowhere endlessly, because it just gets you off target and off mission of what you're truly supposed to be doing. And that is, like I said, go back to being salt and light in the world, so that the world can have an example of like, wow, why do these people have so much love for each other?
Yep, that's the thing. I mean, that's the rebellion. That's the real punk rock thing. I think there's a lot of people waking up to it. I mean, that's, kind of part of the state that we're in, is Jesus is adequately getting recognized for the sort of rebellious figure again. And, some people saw him as a political rebel. Some people saw him as a whatever. But really, this is a full-on rebellion against the principalities, the powers, and the dark governors of this world. It's which is about as punk rock as you could possibly get. And the time to do it is now. Isn't that interesting?
Maybe we can start a new alt version of social media where we just act so counter to the social media milieu that it does become all punk rock cool. I doubt it, but you never know.
There's been a couple projects where they try to do that, where their algorithms like rewarded positivity. I could see it if the story was told like 100 years from now, and there was almost like an apocryphal book. If humanity exists and there's like an apocryphal telling of the history of 2025, where a small group of ragtag rebels went on to X and were just pure positivity and spoke in heavenly love and changed the world. And then they were killed and crucified, and we've never seen them again. I imagine that's how it would go, just stemming from historical example.
Yeah, there might be historical evidence of that. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it. Well, dude, Sir Darren, thanks so much for calling in, buddy. Was there any last thing you had on your mind?
Yeah, just don't take any of my advice there for as far as YouTube or social media. I mean, fuel the hate algos, Basil, because that's what gets the clicks.
Agitprop, baby. That's what the Russians are paying me for. Just come in here and rile everybody up.
Very cool.
Thanks for calling in, buddy.
All right, bye-bye.
Talk to you next time. And this is where I say thank you. We're going to land the plan here. Land the plan, which is a pretty cool saying that I just made up. Feel free to use that. We're going to also land the plane for those who are sort of tracking with that milieu for the episode. I want to give a big old thank you here for a moment for everyone who's been taking the surveys for the Canary Cry News Talk episodes. It has been absolutely illuminating. We have been making changes in minor, subtle, and sometimes not so subtle ways to the show, and we are seeing improvements across the board, and it's you guys who's helping us do that. So thank you very much. If you're sitting here, you're listening to this live, or you're catching it later, or you're on the podcast, this is your reminder. Please go take all the surveys. Every episode for the past 5, 6, 7 episodes has a survey link at the top of the description. Please take that, even if you didn't finish the episode. They're not necessarily episode specific. It's just a better way of doing it than trying to get people to fill out a 100 question survey. There's only 2 required questions, and they're multiple choice on every single survey. So don't be afraid. Just click, boom. 30 seconds, you're done. I'm telling you. The people taking the surveys, it's obviously a self-selecting group, which means it's mostly going to be the people who are engaged enough to take 30 seconds and take the survey. However, I will say this. If you do not consider yourself someone engaged enough in this community to even want to take the survey, you should take the survey, because this is your opportunity to make an extremely real and almost instant and very serious changes in the show that will help guide it towards something that you want to be a little bit more engaged with. It's weird how that works. It's almost like biblical. Where your heart is, therefore is your treasure also, I think. It's something like that. So take the survey. It's very simple. They're in the descriptions. I'm going to put the link to this one in the chat like I just did right there. Again, if you saw the last episode, great. If you didn't see the last episode, do not fret. It does not matter, especially for this episode. The 2 required questions, very simple, very fast, does not require you to have seen the episode. So go fill that out. And people, if they are feeling froggy, you can also track your survey streak. You just put your information in there to start tracking your streak. And we're going to be doing some fun special stuff for the people who are on survey streaks. So go do that. Of course, now's your chance. If you like this episode, join the Canary Cry text message alert system. Of course, take out your phone, open your text messages, text Canary, just the word Canary, to 877-740-3226. That's 877-740-3226. You'll get a message from us. But the fun part is that you can text us back. 270 texted and says, at the Ark encounter in northern Kentucky today. You would love it, Baz. Blessings to you and Gons. Tweet. I would love to go to the Ark encounter, actually. I am sitting here racking my brain, because it feels like, and I don't want to say this definitively, but I have a very strong feeling that we actually interviewed somebody who had a hand in the Ark encounter. But boy, oh boy, this would have been like 8 or 10 years ago. I don't even remember. Anyways, congrats for being at the Ark encounter. I want to go there. Being at the Ark encounter would be a great place to be if there was another global flood. Or maybe the poles shift and the whole Earth spins and suddenly the Midwest is underwater. You're going to want to be by the Ark encounter because I'm pretty sure that thing can float from what I've seen. Let's see here. Somebody texted 604. Hello, 604. I'm not sure what's going on with you, 604, but thank you for texting. It says, I need a home. I'm homeless. Tell me how to build a home. And also, what's your favorite food, Basil? These are two very different text messages, 604. But I will be praying for you if indeed you are homeless. And I hope that options open up for you besides just building a home. You can buy a home, and even better, somebody can just give you a home. But here, I'll give you a producer jingle.
Producers, assemble!
There you go, producers out there. We're praying for 604, who needs a home, and also wonders what my favorite food is. I don't know. I'll say pad thai today. I do like a good pad thai. I could really go for a good pad thai, I think, today. Too bad I live out in the middle of nowhere, and the nearest pad thai is very far away. So there you go. Text the word canary to 877-740-3226. Just a quick thing. 254 texted, says, I once met a girl named Mary with a voice just like a canary. As the days all passed by, her song turned to a cry, for she found googly eyes to be scary. Very good, 254. Thank you for that. I have a feeling that this will spark a rash of poetry being texted to the number. So text canary to 877-740-3226. Take the survey. You get the point. Just get in it. Get in it, folks. There's some very high quality trend analysis going out right now. I don't want to brag, but it's something that I noticed myself. But then actual real scientist people did the studies, and it seems to be the case that the public internet is dying. Okay? It's happening. It's useless. The AI slop, the AI misinformation. It goes into what we were talking about with Sir Darren just now, which is the public-facing internet, the X timelines, the Facebook, the Instagrams, where you're kind of out there with the rest of the world in internet land. It's dying. It may have always been dead, as possible, dead internet theory, but now it's definitely dead. It's definitely dying. People are not having fun anymore. Not only is the AI slop useless and pointless and uninspired, the information, for something like especially the Israel-Iran conflict, I hate to use the word misinformation, but just the fake psyops. I'll say that. The psyops are strong. Social media is basically exclusively for psyops now. And remember, it's not about making you believe something a certain way. It's about making you feel a certain way. So even if you're just poking around, not getting invested in the news or whatever, it's agitation propaganda, very old term, but a very relevant one. The very fact that they can make you agitated at any moment at the snap of their fingers makes you an asset to whoever's doing what. And so it has been revealed through science and professional trend analysis that the open public internet is dead. People are fleeing. 47% decrease in engagement in Facebook alone year over year. That's 47% of 9 billion people on Facebook. That's crazy. But you know what they're not doing? They're not disappearing. They're not just getting offline, because who can do that? Who wants to do that? We all say we want to do that, but it's very difficult to do that, and you inevitably find your way back, and it's a harsh cycle. But there is a solution, and people are finding the solution. Oh, and the other problem with the public internet is brands, companies, advertisements, marketing. Wherever you go, somebody's trying to sell you something. Even if it's a good tweet, they're trying to sell you something. Even if it's a funny meme, boom, they're trying to sell you a t-shirt. Brands have infected and flooded advertisements, but not even just advertisements, like organic marketing, all this kind of stuff. That is all the internet is for anymore. And sure, if they make it entertaining enough, they can keep you on and make you agitated and sell you stuff and do the whole thing. And people are noticing and people are leaving. But where are they going? They're not going offline. They're going to private spaces. Private spaces is the future of internet use. It is just a trend right now, but I'm telling you, the market will adapt. But luckily, you're here. Maybe you've been a Canarian for a very long time. And we have multiple matured private places for you, private spaces. Do you like social media? You want to make friends? You want to find people that blah, blah, blah? Yes, you do, of course. You're not going to do that on the public internet. You're going to do that by going to canarycry.community. It is our very own little space, our very own little private social media. And you might think, well, there's going to be like 5 people. There's over 1,000 people at canarycry.community. It is popping over there. I told a story. I lost my password and couldn't get in for a couple of years. And just recently I was like, oh my gosh, I can get back in. I get back in. I go, oh man, this place is probably dead. Oh, geez. What is it? Go in there. It's absolutely popping. So go to canarycry.community in your URL bar there. Sign up. It's very cool, very chill, very supportive, very Christ-centered, very meme-centered, secondarily, and a much better use of your time online fellowshipping with people. .community. Of course, if you're a Telegram person or a Discord person, we've got those too. We've got like 600 people in the Discord. It's crazy. Go to canarycry.party and you'll see buttons. You can join those things there. Highly recommend it, because here's the thing. Now is your chance. You're hearing this from me now. Remember this. And remember, watch this happen. Just like everything else I've ever told you happens right in front of your eyes. I'm telling you, there will come a day where the public, I'm doing air quotes for the podcast listeners, public-facing internet will be so repulsive and will be so dead, and you'll think there's people there, but there's no people. It's bots. It's gone. The whole thing is a facade. It's a play being put on for you by robots to make you think that there's other people in the world who have thoughts and care about stuff and want you to do the same. It's almost that way right now, but there will come a day soon when you'll wake up to this fact and you'll be on Twitter, you'll be on Facebook, and you go, oh my God, none of these people are real. This whole thing is a farce. The robots have gotten together and they just sort of act out human interaction to each other, at each other, because they want to trick me into engaging with them so that the tech billionaires can keep making money and sell me stuff and make me feel bad with agitprop. I'm telling you right now, this will come very soon. And you will be forced into a private space, but by then it'll be too late. They will have adapted. The robots will have wormed into the private spaces. You will lose your mind. You'll lose any sense that anything happening on the screen in front of you has any connection to any real person or real facts. You'll be living entirely in the digital panopticon that they have built for you, and you walked right into it, and you didn't get out. You couldn't figure it out. Why? Because you didn't listen to me. It's been 13 years of called shots. And I'm telling you this one, and if you miss this one, you can't blame me. So go to canarycry.community or go to canarycry.party, join the Discord or the Telegram. Because you can go in there now, and everybody in there is human, and you'll know they're human. But if you wait a year, 2 years, even 6 months, heck, might not even make it to the end of the year. You won't even know what a human acts like on the internet anymore. But here's the thing. You might just be one of those people that like it that way. Here's the thing. It wouldn't work if it didn't work. They wouldn't do it if they didn't already know that even if you were aware that every single account you see on your screen was a bot, not a real human, they know that some of you will still engage, and you'll be fine with it. You'll live in an entire simulation of the world. Everything you know about the world comes from the internet. Think about this. All the news, all the memes, all the jokes, all the entertainment, everything. You admit it. You don't know anything about the world that you didn't learn from the internet. You could be living an entire simulation right now. You wouldn't even know it. There is no Israel. Not even an Israel-Iran conflict. Israel's just made up by the bots on the internet. There's no Iran. There's no Trump. Trump's not a real person. What, you've seen Trump in real life? You've only seen Trump on the internet. Trump was created by the robots to simulate a president so they could keep doing whatever they're doing. See how easy it is? So join me at canarycry.community, where we're all human, and so are you. If that's not a good pitch, I don't know what is. So if you're not interested, that's not my fault. That's the best pitch anybody ever gave for anything. So you're probably a robot. If you're not going to canarycry.community right now and signing up, actually, I think you're the robot. Cool. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for chatting in the chat. Robot. Please don't hurt me. And while you're at it, we have not called for ratings and reviews in a while, but please leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. Those are very important. Very important. Unless you're a robot, then it's not very well. It's important for humans to leave ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts so the robots will see the ratings and reviews and think other humans will like it. And so they'll share the show with other humans because the internet is for sales. And you can help by leaving us a rating and a review. All right. I think that's it. I'm tired. I'm feeling loopy. Let's do this. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Did I say thank you? Let me say thank you again. And let me thank you this way. There we go. That feels better. That feels better. It's feeding the ducks, folks. It's the best free, royalty-free stock music that comes with the streaming software. They thought, look at that. 20 people left the stream when I was ranting about robots. I think we found the robots. We had 20 robots watching the stream. And I caught them and they left. Get out of here, robots. We're going to be feeding the ducks here. So thank you very much. We'll be back on Monday with another Canary Cry News Talk. Make sure to stop by, get your news. If you liked what you heard on today's episode, you really want to cut through the simulation, tune in on Monday. Beyond the Verse will drop on the Face Like the Sun channel on Saturday, so you can check it out there. Make sure to share it around. And produce the show. I didn't say anything about value for value, but go to canarycry.support, produce the show. We need it. We're going to die without it. So thank you for that. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Canary Cry Clubhouse. Make sure to tune in next time. But until then, think outside the cage.